All right, good evening. I'll call this regular meeting of the Ledyard Town Council to order. Please join me in pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll. Here. Here. Here.
Mrs. McGrattan? Here. Mr. Tom?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Rebecca?
Here.
7 here, 2 absent.
Okay, we have a quorum. Are there residents or property owners that wish to address the council this evening? If so, please come up to the podium microphone. Okay. Yes, Mr. White, come on up here.
Robert Lamb, 99 Downward Ledyard. On Friday, a couple of people called and wanted me to take a look at Spicer Hill Extension, Spicer Hill Road. The town public works director had a company apply sealer. Looked at it. It's about 0.6 of a mile from Maryville Circle to Colonel Ledyard Highway, excluding the Churchill Road intersection. Starting to come up. Not all areas covered. I happened to come back to Town Hall. The public works director was in the mayor's office. Asked him what the situation was. He said it was a test sample. Asked him what the warranty guarantee was because of the pickup and not properly covered with stone dust. He said he didn't know. I asked him what the price of that patch was. He said $11,000. Seems like a pretty exorbitant price for 0.6 of a mile of road for a sealer. Check to see also the town public works had a couple of trucks applying the stone dust. Sweeper on Monday or on Tuesday to pick it up. So that's an additional cost of $11,000. I know we're hurting financially. These kind of practices, hopefully somebody has a control over. So to me, if you're up that way, look at the pickup. He said it seals the cracks. They've been seam sealing a lot of the roads. This is a new method, but the other method is a lot cheaper than this. So hopefully something in money-wise, funding, will be looked to in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other residents or property owners that wish to address the council this evening? Okay. Then under Town Committee Commissions and Board Reports, we have the pleasure of having Ledyard Health District with us this evening, and I'll introduce our Director, Baker Salisbury, Director of Ledyard Health District. Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you all. I have given you a folder with some handouts. I have 2 business of public health information to bring you and 6 bulleted items that you have requested to hear about or found in the minutes. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm accompanied by our Deputy Director, Steve Mansfield, Jen Muggio, our Supervisor of Finance and Administration, and Russ Tillman, our epidemiologist, who will speak to you in a moment. First, I just want to thank you. Thank you for including us in your resolution to first responders for the rather extraordinary 2 days we spent in your favorite storm, Irene. More on that in a moment. Second, I need to give you some correction and some clarification I gleaned from the minutes of the last town council meeting regarding anthrax. My record of the minutes said that Mr. Mayor, when asked about the meeting at Ledyard, said it was a good lunch, it was an interesting meeting. Probably the most distressing thing was the extremely long and detailed list of services and the focus on a concern for an aerial bombardment with anthrax. Somehow, I just find it hard to believe that Ledyard is a target for an aerial bombardment of anthrax, but I guess you have to plan for anything. Later in the meeting, Councilor Diaz noted that many of Ledyard's programs are covered by government grants. and he questioned whether the anthrax program the mayor mentioned earlier was covered by a grant. Mayor Allen replied that Ledyard did not mention that it was a grant program. I have to offer some important clarifications on that. First, it is a grant program. It is a federal grant program through the state, and it is required. It's not voluntary. It's required of all 50 full-time health departments in the state under a 3-year emergency preparedness contract, our 7th contract. It's the subject of much training and drills for us for this particular 24-month cycle, because, as you are probably aware, anthrax has been proven to be weaponized, and it can be delivered in a number of different ways, including the mail. And it is of most particular concern for our area. The mayor mentioned the improbability of Ledyard. Your state police, Homeland Security, and the CDC beg to differ. The U.S. subbase and 2 giant casinos with thousands and thousands of people are considered to be a target. Add to that op sale coming in July of next year with an additional 400,000 or 500,000 people in this port, and you have a target. This is the subject of much meeting and consternation now as we drill. It is the subject of an emergency preparedness meeting at New London Town City Hall this morning. In the event of an aerosolized anthrax attack in this region, I am responsible to ensure the delivery of appropriate antibiotic prophylaxis to 172,000 souls within 24 hours. You heard that number correctly. That's why we drill and train. That's why 24 of our staff are cross-trained in a variety of work in order to ensure that if that unlikely and terrible thing does happen, you're not sitting there saying, where's the health department? The mayor heard about this at the meeting precisely because one of our federal requirements is that we deliver to him, and he signed for, a DVD that stipulates the town's responsibilities through its law enforcement personnel, public works personnel, to assist the health department in the administration of that prophylactics in that total 72-hour period and that crucial 48-hour window with all of the personnel at the town's disposal. So that's why we discussed it at that meeting when I had the CEOs in the room, because our requirement was to deliver and get signed for a DVD outlining your responsibilities in conjunction with our. I emphasize this because I hope, as among other things, you look at what kind of health department you want to have. You look beyond bare bones to real expertise. Third, and the last in our public health information this evening, our work in emergency preparedness, which of necessity by contract focuses on the unlikely and the terrible, also encompasses 7-day-a-week, 24/7 work to protect the residents of Ledyard. I need you to know that this work goes on all the time and is almost entirely unacknowledged. And I want to give you one example of that tonight. My total time with you tonight will be no more than 19 minutes. We just had, in this district, a foodborne outbreak of some consequence. It was a food service establishment in the district, which many of you may have frequented. I cannot tell you which one or where because the state statutes prohibit that. Trust me, it happened. I bring it to your attention not only to illustrate what a health department has to do with 1 minute notice, but also because it was a very unique in Connecticut's history. Most foodborne outbreaks, 99.9% of them, are over and gone before you know about them. By the time somebody gets sick, somebody goes to the doctor, someone may go to the hospital, the lab report gets there, the GPH gets there, the food has largely been thrown away or consumed. For the first time in our memory and of our state colleagues, your health department detected, diagnosed, identified, and intervened in a foodborne outbreak while it was still in progress, still building. Highly unusual. And it happened because your health department takes the number one essential service from the CDC very seriously. The number one essential service we follow is monitor the health status of your community. I'm going to ask our epidemiologist, Russ, who was one of our heroes in this endeavor, to give you the 3-minute addition to accompany the handout that you have there of the chart of an epidemic, a small epidemic. Russ Melnick is our epidemiologist, whose job it is to find this out and stop it.
Thanks, Baker. So the legal size pages you have here is sort of the anatomy of the outbreak. The first page is epidemiology, and the second page is the environmental portion of the outbreak. And the text of each milestone you'll see is colored differently. The red follows the epidemiology. Anything in green is part of the environmental investigation that we conducted. Anything in black is part of the laboratory investigation. And then anything in blue text is part of the regulatory responsibilities of the health district. And that's the exercise in the outbreak. And it's also my unenviable task of trying to describe to you 77 days worth of work in 3 minutes. But I'll do my best. It began with a report of salmonella that arrived at my desk via paper report one afternoon. Now, as Baker said, we're required to follow up on this and interview all cases of foodborne disease to try to identify possible sources of the infection and possible interventions to prevent the spread of infection to other residents. And this particular case was a 16-year-old who had been hospitalized for nearly a week with severe symptoms. I called the child's mother to interview her, and during the interview she mentioned that he had eaten at a local restaurant, but insisted that her son had gotten his illness from the high school cafeteria, because she knew of another student in the school who had experienced a similar illness at around the same time. She provided the name of this other student, who, as it turned out, lived outside our jurisdiction. A call to that jurisdiction's health department to find out if they had received a report with this name wasn't returned. So I called the state health department to see if they had a report, which they did. Because we now had 2 cases with an apparent connection to school, and because this child was outside of our jurisdiction, I urged the state health department not to delay and to interview this child. They obliged, and the next day they notified me that the second child had been hospitalized as well, and had also eaten at the same restaurant. So we had 2 cases of the same disease, but at that point we couldn't assume that the school was the source because they had another thing in common, which was the restaurant. So we decided to look back in our records to see if we had received any other reports of salmonella, and we found one. A report that had come in about 10 days previously. And a review of that interview revealed that this previous case had also eaten at the same restaurant but had no connection to the school. It's important to note that at this point we only had a small number of cases, all of whom had eaten at the restaurant nearly 3 weeks ago, which suggested that this cluster of cases wasn't part of an ongoing outbreak. Still, we initiated active surveillance for more cases, which means that for a period of time we call all the local hospitals and clinics to inquire about any pending lab results or other cases of similar illness coming in for evaluation. At the same time, we sent 2 sanitarians to re-inspect the restaurant, interview the food workers, and collect some food samples for laboratory testing. That same day, our active surveillance, combined with an unprompted notification from Lawrence Memorial Hospital, turned up 4 more possible cases, one of which was still hospitalized. Interviews that same day revealed that each of the additional 4 cases had all eaten at the same restaurant in the past week. One as recently as 3 days before. So this new information changed the picture dramatically for us and suggested that this outbreak was ongoing and really called for immediate action on our part, which we took by closing The next several days were spent collecting stool specimens from the employees, more food samples, and other environmental samples from the restaurant for laboratory testing, with the hope of identifying a source within the restaurant of the outbreak. 2 days after the first food and employee samples were submitted to the laboratory, we received confirmation that 2 of the employees had tested positive for salmonella, and 2 food samples had also tested positive for salmonella. Of particular importance is that the food that tested positive was prepped and ready to go on meals to potentially sicken more residents had we not intervened. Over the next few days, we would find that all but 1 of the regular employees at the establishment would also test positive for salmonella. Having interrupted the outbreak, our focus shifted to working with the establishment to ensure that when they were allowed to reopen, that the outbreak would not continue. To that end, our sanitarians directed that the facility be cleaned from top to bottom. All food preparation equipment had to be disassembled and cleaned with bleach, and all surfaces that contact food had to be cleaned with bleach. For an employee to return to work, they were required to test negative on 2 consecutive occasions, which is a state requirement. In addition, all employees were required to be retrained in safe food handling practices. 16 days after closure, the restaurant reopened with the staff that had been cleared, but it took an additional 2 months after reopening for all the remaining employees to finally test negative and return to work. Overall, this outbreak spanned a period of 26 days. Our response spanned a period of 77 days, during which we identified 11 confirmed cases of salmonella, several other probable but unconfirmed cases. What can't be measured is the number of cases and hospitalizations and perhaps deaths that were prevented by our intervention.
Thank you, Russ. I should mention that the graphic that you have, I blush to admit, was not prepared for you tonight. This case and our work was the subject of the recent Commissioner's annual meeting of health directors in the state to illustrate best practice, how a health department actually intervened in the progress of an outbreak and stopped it. There's a lot more to that. That's a very dense graphic, and if anybody's really interested in the full story, that was part of a 40-minute presentation our staff did to the health directors. If you'd like to know all about it, by all means call. I'll be happy to take you through the epidemiology and the next, I want to briefly touch on Storm Irene. And altogether, by the way, during that outbreak of our 24 staff, altogether, at one time or other, 9 staff were involved in interviewing, testing foods, collecting samples, talking with the police, doing the fallacy things that you never heard of. Irene was another test for us, and just to give you a brief taste, I'll ask Steve, who was a front person in dealing with your personnel in Ledyard, to tell you what happened.
This will be the short part of the presentation. On about the 29th, members of our staff attended various emergency operations centers throughout the district. During some of those visits, we became aware, working with Joe Sastry and Groton, Dick Morris, and East Lyme, that they were going to be setting up water distribution centers and food distribution. I hadn't heard anything going on in Ledyard, and based on our knowledge of Ledyard and the fact that a large percentage of the population is served by on-site water, well water, individual wells, I gave Sean McGuckin a call, emergency management director, and asked him if he had anything in the works. And to quote Sean, he said, "We can use all the help we can get." So went back to our internal EOC and spoke to Baker and the rest of our staff and mobilized a team to get this going. So I called our contact at Dennis, Tony Scora, and set up the mechanism for getting the water and the MREs from Rensselaer Field. We mobilized our trailer and truck for the first couple runs, and then worked very closely with the town of Ledyard to distribute the water and the MREs here right outside. Sean was great in mobilizing people we didn't know he could mobilize, football teams and so forth. Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of pressure off of our staff. At the beginning, I think we had 6 staff people here. But as you can imagine, we have more than one town. We have a lot of different things to do. So working hand in hand with Sean and the mayor and the rest of Ledyard, we delivered MREs to, I believe, it was about 2,200 people in Ledyard. So I won't say it went seamlessly. There were problems In the distribution, we found out later that we could have actually requested a tractor trailer to come and dump it all here right at our doors, and we wouldn't have to take 2 steps, but Tony Sklar didn't let us know that when we first called them. So there were some bugs that we had to work out, but I think it was a really good example of how a regional agency can utilize our resources and meet the needs of our different communities. And that, it's a good example for Ledyard, but there was a separate example in another municipality where they had an issue with one of their shelters, which actually became a regional shelter. So Chris Magnuson, our communicable disease specialist, went to East Lyme. That's where she was needed. So we have that capability to respond based on the needs of the individual communities. So that's it in a nutshell. But, I think it was a really good example of working together in interagency cooperation.
Thank you.
I'm not going to spend time on it, but I want to let you know that you have in your packet the quarterly newsletter for the Ledyard Safe Teams Coalition, which some of you participate. This is one of our strongest coalitions for adolescent substance abuse prevention in the area. And as you can see by the quick chart on the right, the Ledyard Safe Team Coalition, in all of its joint efforts, has indeed made progress, much more so than our colleagues in the rest of the state. I'm absolutely thrilled that the numbers are coming down. And you'll note at the bottom left of the page, since our first federal grant, these are federal grants, our first federal grant to begin our surveys in 2007, the Ledyard, the Ledyard District has brought over $600,000 to Ledyard for teen safety. Pretty happy about that. And that work continues. I would have had Carenza Mansfield come and do a short show and tell on that, but she had a baby 2 weeks ago, so we're struggling at the moment. On business notes, I was asked to speak about the per capita for next year. At this time, I know nothing about the per capita for next year. We are 1/4 of the way through our fiscal year, and we don't have a lot of information yet about the future. We know very little about what the state is going to be going through. As you know, by statute, we are required to, the board of directors is required to settle on a per capita rate by April 30th. They are required by statute to have a public hearing in March. Those are required by statute. We, at Ledyard, as you know, historically, in order to assist towns with their planning, we do a preliminary budget. I'll be meeting with our finance committee in November to do a budget for presentation in December. What can I tell you about that? I can tell you that, as you know, last year we had a huge decrease by virtue of a lot of belt tightening and freezing our supervisor salaries for the second year. And with the aid of some federal grant for our telecommunications, we enjoyed a 9.3% decrease. The only conversations I've had with our board chair and our finance committee chair is that it will be our intent this year, depending upon what we learn about revenues and expenses, it will be our intent, it will be my job to have a 0% increase this year. That's about all I can tell you in the first part of October. You are also interested in knowing about our discussions with Stonington. We have had a meeting 3 weeks ago with the first selectman of Stonington. He was interested in finding out a lot more about district operations and programs and what kind of fit that would be. That was a very good meeting. And we are now planning a second meeting to deal with finances, at his request, to talk about just what kind of fit it would be in financial terms, what we would be absorbing, what they would be providing, what impact that might have on our per capita rate. So those discussions are underway, and I will report back to you whatever I find out. Lastly, twice in this council has been made mention of a multi-town forum. It was on our printed agenda for our meeting with CEOs to talk about that. There were questions about what kind of forum to answer what, and who would attend. I asked Fred if he had any further information from your discussions. He said he did not. We would come back and ask you what you had in mind by a multi-town forum. And would it be for selectmen and town councilors? Would it be for somebody else? We need to know more before trying to call such a gathering. I can tell you that the first selectman of Waterford, and the mayor of Groton, and the city manager of London, and the town manager of Groton have no particular interest in a multi-town forum at this time, unless there's a particular reason that they're not aware of. So that's my open question. Then last I have questions, question mark, for anything that you've heard tonight, or things that I haven't addressed, or more specifics on a proposed multi-town forum for us to work on.
I figure there was one item on your agenda that I think you skipped over. Above the Ledyard safeties was the septic issues.
Thank you, Barry, thank you. Yes. Update on the lingering septic issues on the parking. As of now, one of those issues has been fully repaired, inspected, and the file closed. A second is under its multiple extension by the court. As you know, both the town and the health district are essentially parties to this, but for a year now it's actually been in the hands of the judge, who has issued three, I can't remember how many, has issued several extensions upon petition by this particular homeowner. That last one is up, I believe, October 15th. We have been asked for our opinion. I haven't had a chance to consult to do this jointly with the town. We have said we're not approving, we're not in favor of any further extensions. There is considerable negotiation going on between this occupant and various septic installers and the place that she put a deposit on to move to, which apparently has gone away. So that is all very thick, but again, it's in the hands of the judge, who is hearing a request for a further extension. You'll recall a year ago at this time, my God, it's been that long, the judge gave extensions because, winter's coming, we won't throw people out at Christmas, etc. My attitude is that this is done, and if the health department is asked for our opinion, my answer is that we would not be party to any further extensions.
Let me ask you, with the reduced number of people in the household, is the septic system still putting raw sewage out in the neighborhood?
No. One of the reasons that we've been patient about asking the judge going back and forth with this person and their attorney is that the load has been reduced and the public health danger has been momentarily abated. But when and if they are evicted, at that point, I will be placarding the house. It will be condemned and cannot be reoccupied until the bank or the purchaser or somebody makes the necessary repairs.
Have you let the neighbors know that there is not currently a health issue? Because
Yeah, George Calkins is the lead on this, and he's been in contact with, I think there are 3 different neighbors that are in the loop. So they've been kept up.
because I think those people have been amazingly patient.
Yes.
I thought for sure that they would have a suit, because the judge keeps extending.
One thing I wanted to clarify on the question was asked, is there still sewage flowing on the surface of the ground? And although there isn't at this time, B103 of the Public Health Code, it says that once the septic system has failed, it has failed. So even if they reduce the occupant load down to 1, and nothing breaks to the surface, it's still considered a failed system. They have to comply with the order and fix it, because there's nothing to say they couldn't invite all the people back into the house.
Yeah, but at least we
dismiss the order.
at
And the whole process.
At least we know the neighbors aren't experiencing what they're experiencing. I think that's why Terry asked the question.
And George was just out there yesterday, so he's in constant communication with the property owner.
So that's why I went along with the last extension. But after all,
Councilor Sullivan.
On the septic, the unresolved septic issue, you can't tell much from the court website from what it would appear. Most recently, the occupant asked for an extension, but like objected. The court has taken no action, either approved or disapproved the requested extension. And I would suggest that you consider with your attorney, if appropriate, force the court's hand. Sometimes the courts will just do nothing and let it linger, and I don't think we want that to just sit there and linger.
Point taken. Point taken.
Okay, I wanted to go ahead and say that I appreciate your coming here. I mean, I know we asked you here, but I think this is an outgrowth of what happened last year, which was, I would just summarize as saying, based on the way the state statutes are written, your fiscal year starts in June, and we have to tell you by January 1st prior whether or not we're going to stay in the district, which makes a lot of sense for your preparation of your budget. It doesn't make a lot of sense for our preparation of our budget. And so this was kind of an outgrowth of that to say, well, if you come here, maybe we can get as much information as possible before the deadline when we would have to make a decision. So I appreciate all the updates tonight. I appreciate your commitment. I'm not sure commitment is the right word, but your intention, your expressed intention to try to achieve 0% increase this year on top of the reductions that were made last year. Because I think, once again, I'm afraid as we prepare next year's municipal budget, any increases which have been prevented will be well appreciated by the citizens of the town who probably are going to be faced with more difficult choices this year. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
I'd like to ask the councilors for some feedback to Baker on the idea that we had of a multi-town forum. Perhaps that's what you had in mind there, Councilor Kiss.
Yes, I think perhaps I was one of the first who mentioned the multi-town forum. My intent was, last year, and it was unfortunate, there was all of this work done to start a new health district to save money, and I don't think that Ledyard was brought into that until very late in the game. And so I felt that it would better serve the public if instead of towns getting together and say how this isn't working, that perhaps they could get together and talk to Ledyard and say, hey, these are the goals these are the problems that we see. And so I thought maybe a multi-towns getting together and opening up to Ledyard was the proper way to do that. But just a crazy idea. But that's how I came up with the multi-town forum. I didn't like the fact that Ledyard didn't seem to be consulted before all of this work was done to find a replacement, and that was perhaps an answer. So, but I got to tell you, on top of that I appreciate the professional and the competency of the Ledyard Health District. I, for one, and I understand that you do more than health inspections and septic system inspections. And I believe our budget this year is $110,000 for the services that we're receiving from Ledyard. And I, for one, think it's a bargain. And thank you very much.
Councilor Riddick.
I think you're right that when Councilor Diaz came up with the idea of the towns meeting, I think it was an idea for all of the towns to get together and maybe give some direction to what we liked what you did and what we didn't like what you did. But if they don't want to do that, that's not really an issue for us. But I do appreciate you coming. I think last year didn't turn out quite the way that it should have. And I think your coming today is great. You gave us a lot of information. I really appreciated the water. I thought it was great that, you came in and you did things. And I think for the citizens, it's just nice to see you. I think that a lot of times, unless you're like me and you get the little septic system visit, you don't ever see Ledyard, and I think people don't realize what you do. And you're coming here and doing this presentation. It's on camera. People will see the things, but handing out that water, you were right out there, and it was great for the citizens to see that. I mean, I think behind the scenes, you do way more than we realize, never mind what the citizens realize. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving us this presentation.
Well, I just wanted to say that last year I happened to attend the Groton Town Council meeting, and I happened to hear their discussion about Ledyard. And they were expressing some of the same concerns that I knew we and the Ledyard Town Council were expressing. Mm-hmm. we all are sharing this concern. The concern was, and I'll say what it was. It was that they're trying to hold the line on all of their departments, but the health department didn't seem to be holding the line. And that was, maybe that was true or not, but that was a perceived concern by Groton and also by Ledyard. And that wasn't.
It's news to us. We didn't hear any of those questions, to the best of our knowledge, or concerns about not holding the line from all of our communications with Martin Finger and the rest of the town council. But it was very well received. You have information contrary.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, my way of thinking this, the multi-town forum, was to allow a direct dialogue between you and your staff and the legislative bodies of the towns, the people who worry about the budgets and services and things like that, which, although we are represented on your board, and we understand, that does not have the two-way, it has not been effective, at least in Ledyard, in having a two-way communication. So if we didn't ever have you come to visit us here in these meetings and make reports, we wouldn't know very much about what you do. So if a multi-town meeting is not the right forum, then we need to do this more often, and maybe come once a quarter, twice a year, whatever is appropriate. But I think there needs to be the dialogue between this legislative body and you, because you are such an important provider of services. And there are going to be questions. And we thought that, originally, we thought that all towns would have the same questions about, why is it one size fits all? Why, do all the towns need the same services and pay the same amount for the services? And there were lots of questions like that we hashed out while we went through that decision process last winter.
We thought we'd save you time. If you did the presentation to all the towns together, you didn't have to go or visit all kinds of people. And
the reality is that the needs and desires of city councilors of New London are so different from your experiences, your desires. You can do what you like. I would have a suggestion to meet the need that you're referring to, I think more than halfway. Yeah, I'm happy to come here 6 times a year, bring you up to date with what we've just done, what we're trying to do. I'm happy. But there's another thing you can do. You can consider, it would not require any change. No, it would have nothing to do with statute. You could consider having putting in your ordinances, having one of your sitting councilors on our board, so that there is a monthly presence and a constant stream of it. Well, yeah, I went to the last 2 board meetings, and here's what they're doing, and I raised my hand and said, you could do that. The statute only says that you will appoint 1 board member for every 10,000 unit or proportion thereof of population.
And that's a minimum.
That's a maximum.
That's a maximum.
So you get two members. Now, one of those, or 2 of those, could be from your body, which would dramatically increase the quantity, and I hope the quality of the exchange.
except that our charter might prohibit that. Yeah.
I just raised that because
No,
there's
no,
another
it's a good
town
point.
that does that.
It's a good point.
It's a good point.
And it doesn't have to be in the charter or your ordinance, you can simply do it.
No, but our charter prohibits the council members from serving on other,
Okay, that was
yeah, it's something with our charter.
Councilor Song.
First, I want to thank you also for your presentation, in particular for Mr. Mansfield. I've had multiple conversations with him about a local issue, and he provides me regular updates more frequently than I think about it. So thank you. Second, I want to comment on the multi-town forum. I completely understand why member towns wouldn't be so interested in that. I think Ledyard is a little different because we're looking at the cost of being and continuing to be a member of the district. But in my mind, the multi-town forum would be these other towns that considered and may still be considering going off to form yet another district. And everybody talks about regionalization. Well, here's a perfect opportunity to do that. I don't understand why we talk about forming another district when those towns could join an existing district. And my idea of a multi-town forum is the towns that are thinking about another district should talk with the towns who are in this district and it should be hosted by Ledyard. And to Councilor Diaz's comment, I don't understand why you weren't asked in the first place.
Point taken.
Yes, Councilor McGrath.
Shame on us. We have 2 representatives to Ledyard, and only once in the last 4 years that I've been on the council have we asked them to come and talk to us. So, I mean, we do have representatives, and we should utilize them more.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Marshall.
Do you accept volunteers to work on the Safe Teen Coalition?
Absolutely. They're all volunteers from all over the spectrum of Ledyard society. Parents, institutions, organizations, police, school board members, parents, teens, retailers, town councilors.
So if there's someone out there in our viewing audience that wants to volunteer at the time, they can contact you down in Ledyard?
Please do.
Okay.
Please do.
Yes.
They also have a Facebook page. I'm struggling to find it right now, but there's a Facebook group for Ledyard Safe Teens, and I wanted especially to tell Councilor Diaz, because I know he loves Facebook. I want to join it.
All right, anything else for Barry? Let me ask you, would it be convenient for you to return in December, be the second Wednesday of December, and that would be after you had your internal discussions, or at least your initial discussions on the preparation of your budget, and perhaps you could give us some insight into how that looks, and you'd meet a new council, or at least some of the council will be new in December. Would that be convenient for you?
Perfect.
Okay, let's schedule that, Roxanne. If you will put that down for the probably only one meeting in December anyway, so put it down for the second Wednesday in December. Thank you. Look forward to that.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here it is, Jim. I found it.
Okay.
This one's not bad.
Light reading
People
for
don't want to. It's
later.
that kids don't know. They're not going to like that stuff out.
Comments of town councilors? Councilor Marshall.
On October 30th, we're having a pre-intake conference at the Senior Center on, what road's anyway,
Van Tassel.
Van Tassel. It's on the Senior Center. But this year, to spice up a little bit, we're adding a raffle ticket to the $5 purchase, and it's for a gift card to Olive Garden to help increase our sales. So please come down and see us. That is October 30th from 8 to 12. It's a $5 breakfast. It's a great time. Plus the chance to win a breakfast at a meal at Olive Garden.
Councilor Sullivan, you have your pen in the air?
I do, but I'm not going to comment on that. Yeah, I missed the last 2 meetings of this council.
Yes, thank
We
you.
missed you.
In that I was not physically present here. But I was present in cyberspace.
Yes, we knew that.
So while on business travel, I tuned in and watched on the internet and a few technical things which I can probably bring to the attention of the IT community, because I know they're trying to improve this. But the biggest being that the only microphone that actually detects anything for purposes of that feed is the one that's actually sitting on the camera.
We applied for a grant to buy more.
I know. I mean, these go to our recording system over here, as does that microphone. And so the problem generally occurs when people speak, because being of their nature, they're addressing the council. They talk in this direction, and so that doesn't get picked up very well, if at all, on the microphone. And perhaps we just need to continue to try to be aware of that. And I know that Roxanne potentially turns that podium that way, and I'm sure when Mr. Salisbury was speaking, since he had a loud voice who's speaking in this direction, he was probably picked up, but I'm not sure that everybody else who speaks at that podium would be. But I want to just mention one other point that is kind of a food for thought for counselors. Perhaps as we have a new council and review our procedures, but I know of no prohibition that would prevent participation by a counselor who is not physically present in the room, perhaps including voting. We ought to just be thinking about the pros and cons of doing that, because from a technology point of view, that's certainly possible.
Mm-hmm.
And as as long as it's available to the public, as long as nothing is happening out there in cyberspace that the public can't see or follow, then I think it would be legal. We might even, in a future world, take advantage of that on, say, a February night when there's 12 inches of snow on the ground, but reason to move something forward at a meeting. It might be possible for us to have a meeting and meet all the requirements of the open meeting law and have the public be able to watch it, and we don't actually have to all get in our cars and risk our lives to do so. So just food for thought, but at some point in the future, I'd like to try to find the right forum to come back to the question of whether or not we should consider permitting counselors to participate in meetings when they're not actually physically present in this room.
I think that it might be technically possible if there could be a free exchange of ideas. I mean, the whole point of getting together is that there's a free exchange, and sometimes when you hear, you may have an idea about something, and if we said that it was legal to vote by email and everybody voted without any discussion, that decision might turn out a lot different than when you've heard other people express their opinions, and which might sway you, might change your mind.
You put an iPad where Sean would sit.
Right. So
You can certainly Skype.
So it would have to be two-way, so that you have that exchange of ideas, and then there's the matter of how you then make it open to the public. So who knows what technology could provide.
Yeah, I didn't say we had the answers, or that it was even necessarily an idea we would say yes to, even if it was technically feasible. But I think we should think about it.
Okay. Any other counselors with comments this evening? All right. Move on. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The meeting minutes of September 28th.
Second.
And a second. Are there corrections, additions?
They will be provided.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Abstain?
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yay.
Mr. Holbert?
Yeah.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 abstention.
No.
7 in favor,
One.
1 abstention.
There we go. The motion passes. Under
Would you kick
communications,
Jim
you
on
have
the
a
table?
communications list. And I received one letter of resignation this evening. It was sitting here in an envelope waiting for me, so I know that Roxanne was not able to include it on the list. And it's the resignation of Mrs. Toth from the Library Commission. So I'll pass that to Roxanne. Okay, there are referrals to admin and to finance.
Who's one finance?
All right, any other communications that you need to admit to? Okay. All right, subcommittee and liaison reports, administration, Councilor Sullivan.
Administration Committee met earlier this evening. We have a couple items on the agenda tonight that will be addressed, and I'll get to them when they come up on the agenda. There's one appointment, some reappointments on the consent calendar, and there's an item involving Ordinance 58 revision. We also had a couple of items that we discussed that where we were talking about what's in other town ordinances and job descriptions about authority with respect to employees of various town boards, commissions, committees. And we basically decided to take the easy way out in that we now have our HR person, and so we thought that there's just a lot of stuff out there. This is probably something where we should try to get the input of that individual on this. So our intention is to submit a letter to the mayor, since that individual works for the mayor, and say, I guess actually the individual is under the chain of command where we've set up and include the board, the superintendent of schools. But we'll send it to the mayor, where it goes from there. We're basically going to ask for the HR person to take a look at all of this, both the job descriptions and the ordinances, and then make recommendations on how we should proceed, rather than us just going off and doing something and then finding that our new HR person perhaps doesn't agree with what we might come up with. The same was true when we had a discussion regarding dispatch overtime, trying to control dispatch overtime, and it really goes to who the dispatch supervisor works for. That's again in the job description, and there's some conflicts there. So along the same line, we're basically going to ask our HR person to say, look, we have this issue. Would you please take a look at it and recommend, as appropriate, any potential changes to the job description. And then we had a proposed ordinance that was presented to us regarding establishing an outside overtime rate fee for the Ledyard Police Department services. I believe that was actually drafted by Councilor Diaz, and we will be making some minor modifications to the proposal that came to us, and then our intention is to refer that to finance.
Okay, would you draft the two letters that you referred to for my signature, one to the mayor and?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Questions for Edmund? Okay. Community Services, Councilor Holdridge?
Yes, the Community Services Committee has not met since the last council meeting, but there is something that I'd like to report. The Bluff Point to Preston Trail Committee has received an invitation from the City of Groton City Council.
All right.
This apparently was the result of our letter to the Groton City Council asking for good faith negotiations. So thank you for that letter.
Good job. Good job. Well, you're drafting the letter. Good. Okay. Any questions for Community Services?
Dave, what's the date of that meeting?
It's, let's see, 24th, Monday the 24th.
What time this is going to be?
7:30 at the City Hall in Groton.
Put out a reminder to everybody on that. Anything else for Councilor Holdridge? Okay. Finance, Councilor Diaz?
Yes, we met, since our last meeting, actually, we met just right before this meeting. We have several things on tonight's agenda. We did also discuss two other things that I want to bring to your attention. The first is Councilor Holdridge provided us a proposed property tax agreement between the town of Ledyard and the Ledyard Congressional Ledyard
Ecclesiastical Society.
Thank you. I can't say that word. And there's a plan in this society, which I think is a well-intentioned plan to provide housing for elderly housing that's affordable elderly housing, senior housing in the form of apartments, I believe, condominium units. And he approached planning with a proposed tax abatement, finance with a proposed tax abatement, and Finance Committee is not against this in principle, but we believe it needs to go to planning and have them, the planning department within the town, to have them weigh in on it. Also needs to be reviewed by admin, in that the agreement that was provided to us seems to need some work. It was a little bit too loose, we thought. And also, we need an EDC opinion on this before finance can take any action at all. So that's where we are with that. In addition, we have some good news in that we received a check for the VOAG operating grant that was a little bit above what we had. We had expected it was $394,000 check, and we expected $359,000. So that's good. We also received a check for state-owned property pilot payment in lieu of taxes and that was $24 above what we
But
expected.
they were
So-
both going in the right direction.
But not to worry, finance has already spent that money, so, but that's all, I'm only kidding, but that's all we have to report.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for Councilor Diaz? Okay. Information technology, Councilor Soms, will you
Sure.
take that?
Information technology did meet. We spent more time discussing the DocMall software. That's the software that allows us to better organize town documents so they can be searched and quickly found. It appears in talking with the IT director, who has also talked with the company that provides us that product, we can get out of it for minimal cost. It simply was too complicated for the employees to use, and it's not the employees, it's the software. Takes way more than anybody would want to spend in their lifetime learning how to use. We also discussed the IQM2 Minute Track. I believe that's on our agenda for tonight. We talked about wireless access for the public so that a person could come with a laptop here, get on the internet without getting on the town network, and be able to see the documents that the town council reviews, and potentially other meetings as well. So that was our meeting.
Okay, thank you. Questions for IT? All right, land use and planning, who will speak to that?
Land use and planning did not meet, and I'm sad to say that the Beaver Summit was also canceled
I
this week.
saw
I was
that.
very disappointed. I'm very actually seriously interested in what happens there, but apparently it's being rescheduled.
Yes.
So, thank you.
A comment, but we've had this meeting now scheduled a couple of times, and we've never had it. So the question of what is happening on Lambtown Road Extension has an easy answer: nothing. The concern is that a serious storm could cause great damage to that road based on the fact that drainage is not occurring
That's correct.
as is designed because of actions of beavers, and that we can't curtail the actions of the beavers because they're on private property, and the private property owners don't want us to take any action. So, the long and the short of that is, although we did have a serious storm in Irene, we didn't get nearly as much rain as we anticipated.
No, we didn't.
And if we had gotten the rain that we anticipated, we might have already had the
Lost the
problem that we are hoping to avoid by having this meeting. And I think it's a serious problem. And for anybody out there on that road, I mean, the alternative for the town is to simply abandon it and refuse hereafter to do anything on that road. Close it. That's our other option. It's unsafe. We're going to have to close it.
In anticipation of the meeting yesterday, I drove out to inspect the premises, and the town is actually, in my unprofessional opinion, the town is maintaining the site. There is a beaver deceiver in place which prevents, to some extent, prevents beavers from building their dams, and the device is working properly. There was no beaver material around it, and the water is a good 1 to 2 feet below the level of the road, as is the spillway pipe. So I don't believe, again, in my unprofessional opinion, that we're in imminent danger of losing the road. However, it's dependent on the town continuing to maintain it, meaning clean it out.
Right.
The beavers work every day to build, and someone is clearly working quite regularly to keep
Unbuilt.
unbuilt. Yeah. So I don't think we're going to lose the road, but we are incurring expense. And I completely agree. We need to have this meeting and get some agreements made because the road is at risk.
Just one thing, the way I understand it, the landowners were not intending or hoping that we do nothing. It's just that they didn't like the proposal of the Public Works Director. I think their answer is something to the effect of continuing to maintain the clean out and either deceiver or something.
So they
Good
want-
to know.
They want peaceful coexistence
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
annihilation.
At cost to the town.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Okay, any other land use?
The town, of course, has to make this decision. I actually went on their website because I had read that the study would be on there, but I couldn't find the study results. But most recently, Montville, in the paper, they mentioned that Montville had made an offer to take all their students. The study looks at the costs associated with Montville and Ledyard and other. I wanted to assure everyone that Ledyard is aggressively pursuing this possibility as well, and Ledyard has made that same offer to North Stonington to bring in those students because, of course, Ledyard would be a much better choice for North Stonington than Montville. But the best interest of North Stonington in mind. I know that's a difficult decision, but I just wanted to let you know that Ledyard is aggressively pursuing this as well.
Okay, thank you. Other liaison reports? Councilor Radecki?
Yeah. Well, the pension board met this morning. Yes. Yes, they did. It was really exciting. And they did pass the rules of procedure, and Councilor Sullivan, you'll be happy to know, their rules of procedure were very much like ours, but they did put an additional So we're waiting now for the cost estimates. Linda Savitsky, we had the meeting last night where we interviewed everyone, and Linda's getting the costs for us. So we don't know yet what the costs are, but these will be fee costs, not hidden points that we don't really know what we're paying. So it's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to the cost, and I'm looking forward to this council approving it, which will allow the assets to be moved prior to January 1st so we can get out of the Aetna contract, and so that our retirees receiving the money will have a smooth transition. They'll get one 1099 for 2011 and a different company in 2012. So it should be interesting. We're finally getting there.
This was a huge
undertaking,
and something that the finance committee really wanted to finish before some of us left. So it's a great thing to hear, and it's worked. Exciting. And it's worked. It's going to be a real benefit for long term for this town. So it's a good thing.
Good. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Mayor Allen, your report.
Thank you, sir. Let me pick up on Solitary's comment on Parkwood Drive. There's a little bit more to the story about number 9 Parkwood Drive. The deposit that the landowner there, homeowner, had on a house. The person who was holding the deposit had indicated, or has indicated, that he's not going to return the deposit to the homeowner at number 9 Parkwood Drive, but that he had the ability to repair the septic system. I talked with George Hawkins yesterday before he went out to check the septic system. Have to be a little bit skeptical, but as George said, if there is an ability to repair the system and replace the system, you really can't refuse that repair replacement to the homeowner. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the court does with this new development.
That's so.
So it's a foreclosure. The homeowner owns the property. He can do whatever they please. So if they want to have somebody repair it, they don't even need the court permission.
It should not affect the foreclosure, but it would the eviction.
Well, yeah, but I imagine if the homeowner made the repair and came back to the court.
The eviction would go away, but unless they catch up the bank for the foreclosure.
They still grow foreclosure. I mean, it sounds like there's something else up the sleeve here. None of that sounds like it makes any sense to me.
I say that there's some skepticism about whether or not it can work, but as George said, you really can't refuse the homeowner. If in fact they have the ability to repair or replace the system, you really can't prevent them from doing that, and that could effectively stop the court case for eviction.
We wouldn't care if the reason for eviction would go away.
Well, that's right. We don't. I'm just letting you know that that's the rest of the story that George told me yesterday. Route 214, you know, has been extended. The paving hasn't been finished. It was supposed to be done by now, but it's been extended. It will probably be another week. Route 117 started today, as you no doubt have noticed, they're on time with starting this one. And it certainly has caused some delays, and people should anticipate delays. Now you got both major roads that are in process.
I'll tell you, there's a safety issue at this intersection out here too, because they ground off all the lines. And now, people who know that there was supposed to be a left turn lane, they're coming over pretty far, and if you turn right from 214 on 117,
Yeah,
you
there's
may
a car
find a
right
vehicle
there,
right
yeah.
there.
It's going to be interesting to see whether the paving of 214 includes that area that you're talking about that they milled as part of the 214 project and not the 117 project. I thought that they were going to start, and that's what I'd been told, that they were going to start on the Groton end and work up this way, but obviously that's not where they started.
That's what it said.
But we'll get through it. It's going to go into the middle of November. Yes, sir.
To the chairman's point, if there's any temporary measures that could be put out there, like cones or whatever, to identify some lanes, that would be a good thing.
A necessary thing. He's right, those lanes, because people don't know where to stop, and they're all over the place out there.
I will get Steve first thing in the morning. They certainly had plenty of cones on 117 this morning,
Yeah,
all the way up.
but they didn't have enough people. Because when I went to turn out of Town Hall, I wanted to go left, and the traffic was coming this way, and there was a guy way down in front of Holdridge's that finally saw me turning, and he stopped me. But I could have turned out into that lane, not knowing that there was cars coming. It was a little hairy.
You do need to be careful, and I noticed this again tonight, that there is quite a lip where they have done the milling. There's quite a lip, so be careful when you're leaving. The interviews, the long-awaited interviews at dispatch, are supposed to be on the 19th of this month. I'm not sure why it has taken as long as it has taken, but that's the statement that the dispatch interviews are the 19th. The interviews for the Administrative Emergency Services, our new HR, Don Steinhoff, is coordinating that for me, and they have established the afternoon of the 19th for those 3 applicants. They can do it all in one afternoon. Regina indicates that the website, you probably know this already, standing up the new website, which will be the 17th of this month. Still some things being done, but that's the projected date for standing up the new town website. The proposals for the Clark Forum and the other piece of property that I was directed to go out and secure resulted in a single proposal, and it's the same lessee that has been leasing the property for several years. So we spent some money, we didn't get any additional proposals, but we'll be bringing to land use the proposed lease. I meet with at the Council of Governments tomorrow morning with the CLMP representatives for a review of the storm, and it could be an interesting meeting. I expect it'll be an interesting meeting. But I give them courage, and I've mentioned that to the CLMP people that were at the Council of Governments meeting, and Councilman Grattan was there also, and may have spoken to CLMP at their booth, but I complimented them for having the courage to come out and be at the CCM meeting. They're okay. The people on the ground are okay. It's just that flow of information from above. Yesterday afternoon, we concluded the bidding and sale of $3.355 million of bands, and we achieved a very successful interest rate of 0.35%. That's for a single year, but 0.35% is the interest rate on those bond anticipation notes for 1 year. The roadside mowing, this one really is directed to the people at home. Roadside mowing is continuing, which we do every year. One of the Public Works operators of the mower who retired has been replaced by a new roadside mower employee. And not everybody understands that the town right-of-way is the town's right-of-way, and it's not part of people's yard. Now, that does create some ill will when their bushes get cut down. Sometimes it absolutely needs to be done for safety, visibility, and I brought an example of that to Public Works Director Maslin this afternoon, one that I noted over the weekend. But the residents need to understand that the right-of-way that belongs to the town is fair game, if you will, and a roadside mower, it's not a landscape service. It's to cut that area which belongs to the town in a right-of-way. And I mention this because it has caused some anguish about some bushes. It is what it is. The employee operating the roadside mower is doing what his job calls for. The DVDs that Baker Sullivan had mentioned, one went in the mailbox of Emergency Management Director Sean McGuckin, and I don't think he's picked it up yet because he's been out of town on Homeland Security work a lot. He sent me an email today expressing concern because he is overloaded and he feels badly that he's not able to do as much as he needs to do for the various hats that he wears. I didn't check the charter this afternoon. I don't believe that it specifies that the Emergency Management Director needs to be the chair of public safety. I believe that it's specified, or the ordinance that created the Public Safety Commission, I believe, calls for him to be a participant. But I don't believe it calls for him to be chair. I've asked him if there's anything that we can do to lighten his load because he does such a fantastic job. Don't want to run any risk of him feeling like he has to leave the volunteer positions that he does for us. The pension consultant, I think Councilor Wadecki covered adequately. There was something decided, and I'm not sure that I remember exactly what it was. The interviews were yesterday.
The interviews were yesterday.
And the pension board was today.
Correct.
The interviews yesterday didn't result in choosing.
The interviews yesterday resulted in a recommendation to the pension board, which they took.
Which they took.
And they passed it, yes.
Okay. And my last item is the ordinance that you sent to me that I sent back, and it may tie into Council Sullivan's mention of language within our ordinances and so forth. I put a cover letter on it, which I hope you all got, and my concern was the word engaging employees. And mentioning that to the town attorney, my concern was that there wasn't anything else that said that it didn't mean hiring employees. And I saw that as the potential for conflict. If an employee gets hired by them, I'm supposed to discipline or direct them. We don't want to go down that road. And so I sent it back, and I would ask you to reconsider the word engage.
I just have to ask you why you vetoed something that your veto has no effect, because we didn't change those words. So by vetoing the new ordinance, you prevented us from putting into effect the words that the senior commission and the council both wanted, but the old ordinance now remains in effect.
And that
it
has that word in
the
it.
exact same words. I wish you had just pointed out to us it was a problem,
during the months it was in committee.
Well, even if it was after the fact, even if it didn't come to your attention until you were looking at the new ordinance. But nothing has changed. By you vetoing that ordinance, we've taken a step back, and the words about engaging employees are still there.
But you can change those quickly.
We could have changed them quickly without your veto. We could have changed them quickly without your veto if you'd asked us.
If I didn't do that, there's 5 days, and then it goes into effect as is if I don't do anything.
And I'm saying that if we do nothing,
the old one
has the exact same words.
I don't want you to not do something. What I couldn't allow happen is for, in my opinion, leaving the words engaging employees look to me too much like hiring employees. and I only had 5 days. I had to do
No,
something.
you didn't only have 5 days, because whether you approved that one, or we go back to the old one, the words are the same.
But I want you to change them. And the option that was in front of me at the time was within 5 days to either approve or disapprove. And if I failed to do either, it automatically went in as it is.
And
I don't think he understands.
I know.
I don't know, aside from being able to, exercise a power of the mayor, nothing was accomplished. Because however long it takes us to get an opinion from the new HR guy and to resolve these words in all of our ordinances and with all the commissions and boards and so forth, that's how long it's going to take.
From all the ordinances, I have gotten the opinion of our new HR guy on that word in that ordinance, along with the town attorney, and it was, don't let it stay there. We didn't look at all the ordinances and all the job descriptions.
Did you tell, when you were
and everything else.
discussing it, did you tell them that if they weren't new words?
I asked them to review the ordinance as presented.
No.
The point is the words stay there whether you veto it or not.
Yeah. So nothing was accomplished, other than we didn't straighten out the other things that we wanted to straighten out. All right. Do you have other reports or questions for the mayor? Councilor Marshall?
Mayor, for the residents at home, how big is the right-of-way on the side of the road?
It varies. It's not always the same. It's not always 15 feet or 20 feet
Measured from where?
from the
Center.
edge of the pavement.
Actually, I think the number is measured from the center line.
Center line, it's 25
Well,
feet.
it wouldn't be 10 or 15 feet.
It's
No,
20
no, but
it's 20
it usually, it's measured from the center line, but it usually results in about 10 or 15
Yeah.
feet past the pavement.
But it's, I thought it was
But the number
25
is-
feet from the center line.
But it's not, I guess the bottom line, it's not always the same. It follows stone walls in some places.
So residents should check with Public Works before they plant something close to the street to be safe.
That's probably the safest. I mean, if you look at your deed, that probably, and most people don't have their points on the corners of their lot where they can still find them. But I just wanted to make people aware that within the right of way, bushes and shrubs do get damaged or cut.
Councilor
I
Ray?
think the people's frustration is that we only do the roadside mowing once or twice a year. So I mow the town, my husband mows the town's right of way all the rest of the year. And tiger lilies happen to grow up around our mailbox. We didn't plant them, but they're pretty. And they come and they mow down the tiger lilies, which aren't affecting any sight line other than perhaps my driveway. But the town doesn't maintain that right of way the rest of the year. So people who plant bushes there and are maintaining them, I would get upset if my bush got cut down that I planted there. I've maintained this right of way all year and somebody comes along and mows down my bush. So that's the problem. We're not maintaining it year round. So a lot of homeowners are, so they plant in it.
Well, I'll ask tomorrow whether the roadside mower goes ahead and cuts where the grass at the roadside in the right-of-way is being maintained by the homeowner. I've got an opinion on what I think the answer will be, but I'm going to check to be sure.
I don't know why if somebody has been mowing the grass and it's no higher than the rest of the lawn, there's not much for that roadside mower to do.
Right. Well,
That's
where
what I
where
think
where
the answer will be.
where Marcia Hancock's house is. It's on the corner, and tiger lilies have grown up in front of the stone wall. And the people that used to live there put a sign out every year: "Please don't mow." They're not. They kept it. They weeded them, cleaned the tiger lilies out, and every other year they mow them down. And it would upset the people who live there because they naturally grew, but they tended to them, and they weren't in any sightline issue, and they were maintaining that. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes.
Councilor.
Speaking of mowing, I just wanted to remind the mayor that regarding your comments on the Clark Farm and the fact that we got the same lessee that we've always had, the original intent in ending that lease and asking for a new lease was so we could enforce wording in the lease that would make sure that they would maintain the entire property.
Right.
Because one of the residents pointed out that the Clark Farm, is growing up to Russian olive. And our intent in terminating the lease was not to get the lessee off the land, it was to get him to maintain the property as it should be.
That's so.
Yeah, on the same issue, also to correct a deficiency, I think, another deficiency in the past lease, in that by state statute, when we have a transfer of interest in town-owned real property, we are required to have a town meeting to approve that. And I don't think we ever did with the last Clark Farm lease, and we will with this one. So this has to go to town meeting, just like the CVS sale did. That was a sale of the property, in fee simple for $600,000. This one's a lease for, I think, $1,000 a year. It's a lot less, but the state statute doesn't differentiate. We're going to transfer our interest in real property. We have to have town meeting. Town has to vote on it.
Even when it's binding on heirs and assigns, and an heir inherits the lease?
No, it's our property.
But the lease that was there indicated that it was binding on heirs and assigns, which is why the son took over
That lease
the
was
lease.
technically never valid, because by state statute, it had to go to town meeting for approval, and it never did.
But it has to go to town meeting for us to assign away the rights. So,
Right,
so if it,
theoretically,
yeah,
Mr. Clark, or I'm sorry, not Mr. Clark.
Mr. Macha.
Mr. Major.
Mr. Major, who had, he was the lessee. We were the lessor as a town, and that lease, he had no rights under that lease, in reality, because that lease was never valid, because it was never submitted to the people of the town.
but I think the question here is, if we have the town meeting and we lease it to Mr. Major, and he assigns it to someone else, whether it be by death or just assignment, do we then have to have another town meeting?
Not if it is within the lease, not if the first time if that's contemplated.
Okay, that's what I think
So
Mary Ellen was asking.
The fault is that whenever that first lease was done.
Correct, we needed a town meeting.
Which I think was quite a long time ago. That if there was no town meeting, that it was never a valid lease.
Yeah, and I think what happened was people made what they thought was a reasonable decision, they just didn't follow the state statute. I mean, the state statute would prevent you as a mayor or us as a council from just deciding to lease out property and never giving the people the town vote. We can't do that.
Okay, we'll fix that.
I have another comment.
Yes.
Or question, really. It has to do with the latest labor negotiations with the union that I believe we've entered into. I think it's the nurses union, is that right?
Well,
Health assistants.
Health assist, school health assistants.
well, that's one of them. We have met with the supervisors union.
Yep.
We've met
Town
with
hall
the
employees.
Town hall union. We've met with the nurses assistants.
So specifically, my understanding is that the town attorney, I'm not the town attorney, the town's labor attorney is participating in those negotiations. Now, when this council approved the establishment of a new HR director position, approved a total of $90,000 out of the annual budget to fund that position. My understanding was that person, some of the return on investment was going to be to have that person do union negotiations and not have to pay an attorney by the hour to come and participate in these negotiations. Now, as someone who has practiced law in the field, if that person, the HR director, I understand is an attorney, if that person knows the law, then they ought to be able, in a matter of one afternoon, read the existing contract, read one before that, maybe get a little bit of information about what the current positions are between the two sides, and be ready to go and lead those negotiations. I don't understand why that is not happening if others think that it's not.
You do, because we had that conversation 2 nights ago here. And I said at that time, and would say again, that he spends half his time at least with the Board of Education. So he really doesn't have all his time. He works for both. He doesn't have all his time to spend on our labor negotiations. And I think it's not wise to take somebody who doesn't know the contracts, doesn't know the players, doesn't know the history, and I've tried to brief them on what you all want and expect from them. But I think it's not reasonable to expect a brand-new employee to be dropped into that position and expect them to get the results that you have said you wanted.
I don't think that it is reasonable that we ask the taxpayers to fund another employee to the tune of $90,000 and then continue to spend money on a lawyer to do a job that this employee should be qualified to do. And this employee should be qualified to do. And I beg to differ that this employee needs some period of time measured in months to get up to speed. No, they should be ready to go in a matter of hours. I bet I could do it in a matter of hours. I don't understand why this person, and from everything I've seen and heard, he's a wonderfully qualified person. So I think we're just spending money on attorneys that we don't need to spend. We've been here before. And I think we need to stop.
Comments? Yeah, certainly he doesn't spend half of every day for the, I mean, you know, one day he may focus entirely on a town, and the next day maybe he's got Board of Ed. Certainly he's not dividing every day in half.
Well, he does. He's over here in the morning, he's at the Board of Ed in the afternoon.
Well, for
Except
routine.
that tomorrow, I asked him to be part of the, tomorrow, to be sitting with us with the next session that Councilor Solms and Diaz will be hopefully attending with the supervisors. No?
I should be at least in the beginning of it.
But I've asked him to sit in on that. I want him to get up to speed as quickly as possible. But I've also asked him, I've tasked him with handling the interviews for the Administrator of Emergency Services, which is set for the afternoon. He usually spends the afternoon at the Board of Ed, the morning over here on this side.
I mean, I will reiterate. I mean, I have served as the commanding officer of the Naval Submarine Base, directly responsible as the chief executive of employees that had a labor union, and I was the supervising agent for those labor negotiations, and they were led by an HR professional, no attorney in the room. I have been the town attorney for the city of Norwich, city attorney, and there have been labor negotiations led by the HR professional, no attorney in the room. But he'd be paid to go sit in on those negotiations. I mean, it's simply not necessary to have an attorney being paid by the hour do these negotiations. Now, if you have nobody else, I can see why you would do that. But we now have somebody else. That's the person we should be.
Amen. Okay. Old business. If there is none, then before we go on with new business, is there a need to modify the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go on with new business. The consent calendar consists of 4 items.
I'm going to move the consent calendar, but I'm going to remove item 3 as it did not pass finance.
Okay, so items 1, 2, and 4 are the consent calendar.
Second as amended.
Okay. Anything else?
I read that.
Please call the roll for the consent calendar.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yay.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrath?
Yes.
Zero opposed?
Okay, the motion passes for items 1, 2, and 4 of the consent calendar, and we'll talk about item 3 when we get to finances and what happened. Okay, administration, item 5.
I move that we adopt ordinance 58, an ordinance establishing a permanent commission for senior citizens in the town of Ledyard, as dated September 28th, 2011.
Second.
This is to override the veto?
Well,
For discussion.
yeah, that's the motion.
Since the point being that since the language in question was not unique to the.
Well, we don't have anything coming out of committee about the language, so.
No, but I mean, your point is, we'll go ahead with the revised ordinance because either way, the language regarding
Correct.
Section 4 Delta is the same.
Now, I'd like to start by saying that although I made the motion, I don't actually think it's necessary, because my reading of the town charter says that the revised ordinance as we adopted on September 28th is actually in full force in effect, despite the mayor's attempt to disapprove it, because he didn't disapprove it in accordance with
The charter.
procedure.
Correct.
So his attempted disapproval, in my view, is not effective. The town charter says that the mayor, when he wants to disapprove, must send his notice of disapproval and his reasons, therefore, to the clerk of the town council within 5 days. I think within 2 days, the mayor sent his notice and reasons to Roxanne. Roxanne is not the clerk of the town council. Cal Broward is. Direct your attention to the charter in Chapter 6, Section 2, which says, in fact, the town clerk shall have the powers and duties of the clerk of the town council. I checked with some of the other towns. This is actually not uncommon. The town clerk is often dual-hatted as the clerk of the town council. The reason is for that is because towns, like Ledyard, usually put severe restrictions on the ability of the town council to give any tasking to town employees, but the town clerk, by statute, sort of an honest broker who has to keep all the records, has to do formal things for ordinance revisions, for referenda, etc. And so there are times when it's appropriate for the town council to actually task them. In fact, when we have a town meeting, the town clerk is triple-hatted as the clerk of the town meeting, and at that point takes direction directly from the town meeting. And you can see in our section, Chapter 4, it says that we can't talk to town employees, basically. I mean, it says we really can't task them. But in that same section, it says these restrictions do not apply to the town clerk when he's acting in the capacity of the town council. So, the reading of the charter says clerk of the town council is actually the town clerk. That is the person who's supposed to get the notice of disapproval. I checked with the town clerk's office today. There was no notice of disapproval, so I believe that the ordinance is in full force and effect. Nevertheless, if anybody wants to vote to override it, we can still vote. But I don't think it's necessary.
Discussion?
I'm just so impressed with Councilor Sullivan. I want to tell you, it's such a pleasure to serve on this council with people who do their homework like Councilor Sullivan does, and I thank you for the time you spent on this. And that's all I have to say.
I think we should vote, because even though you don't believe that the mayor, that the disapproval was there, the mayor thinks it was. So if we don't vote, he's still going to believe it's not in effect. So I think that our vote is necessary just for that reason. Although I do agree with you, Councilor Sullivan, that is my interpretation of the charter as well.
Okay, and before we move on, I just want to make a comment on a related but separate, so it's really sort of separate from the motion. But the thing that was in the agenda was to actually change the language of one particular section of powers and duties. I think that's what the mayor actually said that he wanted changed. It was an intentional decision by the administration committee not to recommend that. And the reason for that is because under statute and the charter, revisions to the ordinance have to be posted with the town clerk and have to go to a town meeting. Amending that section has never gone through that process.
Right.
And we didn't feel that.
If we discussed it and decided to take action on it, that action would have included starting the whole process.
All over again.
To a town meeting.
Yeah, we
Okay, so
wouldn't
in
have.
any event, it wouldn't have affected.
No, this was just to get it on the agenda so that we had it here to talk about. But if we had decided to make a change to that section of language, we would have to start the process over again.
I sort of got the impression, maybe I was just wrong, that what, in the mayor's discussion, that what he thought could happen would be that he would disapprove this, it would come back to us at this meeting, and in moving to override it, we would also change that provision. And
On the spot, no.
Yeah, and I don't think we can do that.
No.
I agree.
Right, we can't.
Also, I think Roxanne is frequently referred to as the clerk of the council, and that's probably why the mayor sent it to her, not the town clerk.
She's the administrative clerk.
She's
So-
our
Right, but I'm
administrative
saying
assistant.
she's
She's-
Yeah.
frequently
Oh,
referred
that's
to
right, yeah.
She's our
as the
administrative
clerk of
assistant.
the,
as well.
council.
Understand the possible confusion, but I think it's clear cut if we just go ahead and vote. So, is there other discussion? Councilor Holder?
Are you saying that we can't change the word to engage?
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
Well, I think we ought to.
Because the process, well, I agree. I agree with you that we should remove that possibility that the commission thinks that they can engage employees.
Hire employees.
Whichever word you care to use, we don't want them in the business of hiring. I don't even think Section 5, which talks about employees, needs to be there. Because they won't have any employees of their own, okay? So, to modify the ordinance means we need to restart the process.
So at least this gets in effect the
So,
language, yeah.
Where we are, if we don't take action tonight, where we are is the old ordinance is in effect, which has the words about engaging employees and so forth and so on, but it doesn't have the revisions that we tried to get through 2 weeks ago. So if we override the veto, we'll get the revisions we made 2 weeks ago and have done no net change to the wording on employees, but as Councilor Sullivan mentioned earlier, we're going to write a letter to the mayor asking the HR person to review all of our documents that refer to the relationship between boards and employees and make sure that we get this across the board.
And change them all.
Change them all.
And make them
I
all.
would think that we still would have the authority to change the word engage if we wanted to right now.
To what?
A sign or something like that.
See, if you change the word, Dave, then what we are doing is formally changing something within the section that assigns powers and duties to the commission without the benefit of having that change be, without the benefit of anybody in the town knowing before we were going to do it, that we were considering doing this, and that without having the members of the commissions themselves or anybody else interested in the powers and duties of the senior commission from coming up and saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? What are you doing? What, they're, proposing to us what they thought it meant when it said engage, and what is the new word, whether it's a sign or any other word, what does that mean? I mean, you know what I learned last time? We tried to change something, we came to the public meeting, and I was wrong. We're dealing with the senior advocate position or whatever, and I was wrong. Somebody came to the public meeting, he's sitting out there, Annex Williams, and he's straightened me out. I mean, so the process has some value, and it's required, and that's why I think we need to go back through it to change something that has never even been addressed as we've gone to the history.
But I think, though, that we have, in the past, we have, after the public hearing, we have, when we're making the final version of the ordinance, we have clarified language, even though it hadn't been in the original proposal.
That's
Well,
clarified.
That's true, but we've usually done it as a result of some comment that's been made.
Right.
In direct response to the public hearing.
And clarifying or making editorial changes or commas or taking out words isn't dramatically changing the ordinance. Sometimes changing one word is a very material change to an ordinance that requires it, and I think this does.
In this case, it's removing a power.
Yeah, and I think it requires that it goes to a public hearing again.
I agree. So getting us back on track, what we're voting on is to accept
The changes we already
Ordinance
accepted.
58, which would be an override of the veto, which takes a minimum of 6 votes, correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay?
So the motion is to override the mayor's disapproval/veto dated September 30th, 2011, and approve the revisions to Ordinance 58, and ordinance establishing a permanent commission for senior citizens in the town of Ledyard, as adopted by the town council at their September 28th meeting.
Yes.
Sean, that was a wonderful motion you just made.
Yeah, that was
And
great.
Bill, you second that nice motion, right?
Already seconded.
Okay. Is there other discussion?
No.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Item 6, Counselor Sullivan.
I move to appoint Ms. Julia Moretti, Democrat, 6 Sunset Avenue, Ledyard, to the Housing Authority for a 5-year term ending March 31st, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Bucker.
Second.
Mr. Bodecker.
Bodecker, I apologize to Mr. Bodecker. Ms. Moretti is, I understand she's relatively new in town. We didn't have a whole lot of information on her. Her form didn't provide a whole lot of information. Nevertheless, the Democratic Town Committee has vetted her and said she is good to go and willing to serve.
And we need volunteers.
She does volunteer at the Lakewood Senior Center. That's how her name.
Okay, that's great.
Very good.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
I think I should do a motion.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Okay, finance, item 3.
Yes, Finance did not take any action on that agenda item today because we had no backup material that we normally receive. So that's why we didn't want to move it in the consent
So
calendar.
that will remain on your agenda as old
Correct.
business?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, Counselor Diaz?
Yes, I move to I move to transfer an additional $810 from Fund 24, balance to expenditure line 24-1520-16-900 computers to cover the full cost of the purchase of a HP TouchSmart all-in-one PC.
Second.
And please note that's revised a little bit from what's on your agenda. This is not buying another HP TouchSmart PC. We approved this in our last meeting, town council meeting, a sum of, I think it was $2,400 or something, but the math wasn't done correctly, so the full amount needed to be increased $810, but the number of computers purchased has not changed.
Okay, discussion, questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 8.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the IQ-M2 contract dated October 3rd, 2011, to expand the program functionality and to subscribe to the Minute Track unlimited town meeting management software.
Second.
So there have been many people involved in reviewing the Minute Track software and the IQ-M2, which is this live streaming. There are many advantages offered by moving to the next higher version of this software. The contract that we're authorizing the mayor to sign has a 30-day cancellation policy. So there is no long-term. We're not making a long-term commitment to do anything, to purchase anything here. But we're so impressed with what this software is doing and the additional capabilities it has to ensure that the workflow process within town runs a little smoother with regards to FBR approval. For instance, tonight we got something on our agenda to approve what we just did not approve on the consent calendar because certain portions of it weren't completed. This is going to allow that for that tracking. And the amount of monies that we're talking about here is an additional $325 per month. I believe that's the number.
$395.
I'm sorry, $395. We're looking for a commitment of 8 months, at least for the end of this fiscal year, which is $3,160. The money is, for the most part, covered in our video streaming line item, $2,765, so it's already budgeted, with the exception of a small differential. And we think this will allow them to fully vet the software over the next 8 months to see what it will do for us, and then hopefully continuous usage in the next year as well.
Yes, Councilor Reddick.
We had a demonstration of a lot of these capabilities at the library. Councilor McGrattan was there and Councilor Sorm, and God was there as well. And several town and department heads and employees, and they were very impressed with it. In fact, we received a notice today from tax collector Joan Carroll that she would be very interested in using this capability.
Is this what you were working with before the meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
So you find it easy to, the interface is easy to use? And
I think that it will be useful for a lot of departments. There is a document sort of a tracking program in there, or a document. It would help us, the council, replace our correspondence thing that we do every day now. You would be able to go right on, put in today's date, get the correspondence, or you could query things in other ways by subject matter. Or, for instance, each day I say today's correspondence is out there. Well, say in 3 weeks from now, you say, I want to look up that letter regarding staffing. I can't remember what day it was. Well, you could just put the word staffing in.
keyword in it.
Yeah.
You'll get it. So you won't have to say, was that 2 weeks ago? Was it 3 weeks ago? What day was it on? So it would be more user-friendly for you people as well as town departments throughout town hall. If everyone is using it, all the documents will be in there, and you'll be able to access. They'll be able to access.
So if something needs multiple reviews on its way to signature, this tells you where it is in the review chain?
Yeah.
That would be the tracking approval program.
Yeah.
And there would be you have to preload it in as part of the setup of it, but certain things, for instance, financial business requests, there would be a order of the department would create it, it would go to the finance director, from the finance director it would go to the mayor, from the mayor it would come down to
Finance.
council, but each person, it would be automated, so once the department head gets it into the system, the finance director would automatically receive an email saying, you've got items for approval. Once she does her job, the mayor would get an automatic message and so forth, and it could be used for job descriptions, resolutions, ordinances, a variety of documents.
And what I was saying is the finance director was very impressed with it. The assistant planner was. There was a lot of excitement in the room and a lot of people interested in using it. I know we did this document management that we're finding out is not user-friendly and we're not going to use it. This one, at least we've seen it and we can test it for 8 months. And if we don't like it, or even test it for 3 months, if nobody's using it, it's not working out, we can drop the contract.
Okay.
So.
Why does the motion not need to describe the source of the additional funds?
Because right now, there's enough funding to pay for all the way but to the last month. So we're authorizing the mayor to sign the contract, but it is a month-to-month contract.
So by May,
We'll find the money.
the line item will be empty in May or April?
It'll be empty for June, but at that point in time, the council's budget may have enough money to easily fund the $200-something shortage.
All right, other discussion?
Yeah, I have
Yes,
a couple of
Councilor.
comments. First, I also was very impressed with the software. Roxanne has a secret, super secret database that she uses now. So when we ask for something, she can go and find things. It's got 11,000 items in it because she's been using it for I forget how many years. At some
least
point,
100.
At some point, we'll exceed the capacity of that system. But as she pointed out, the real benefit is that we can now all search on our own. If you've ever tried to search on the town's website for the documents that we use now, you can't do a word search. You have to go through open every single day, every single month. It takes forever, so I just don't do it and call Roxanne.
Me too.
So I'm totally in favor of the system. It's great. I agree everybody else was impressed with the town employees who were at the demonstration were very enthusiastic. But when IT reviewed the contract, I noted that it mentioned that travel expenses would be paid back with a markup. And I crossed out the language and provided new language to Regina, and I see that the contract's been changed, but what they did was say that travel expenses are not included, it will be invoiced separately. So I suspect we're going to receive invoices with markup. And when we question them, they're going to say, well, it doesn't say in the contract, we can't do that.
Okay, what are we paying travel expenses for?
I don't know. If we have him come here, we're paying, it says
We
we're
didn't
paying
have
for
him come
travel.
here, though, we did it.
So,
They've never traveled here. We've done it all via the way we've.
okay. So we have to go into this with the understanding that we're never going to ask them to travel or expect that we're going to see a 20% markup on travel expenses.
We're not gonna have them come.
All right. Okay.
I don't think we need him because the way we work, he's been very accessible. I just call him, I send him an email, they reply right away. He's willing to do like a webcast thing.
Yep, and that works fine. I
It was
don't see
very
the need.
informative, yeah.
Yeah. We just need to remember not to ask them to travel.
Where are they based?
So, where are they? I don't.
Hawaii.
No.
No, just kidding.
Our person is in New Jersey, but it looks like the company is actually based in Virginia.
Okay.
So he's in
Software people often have a way where if they need to, you can have them take charge of a laptop.
All the time.
Right,
That's what he's been doing.
And that usually alleviates the need.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so no other discussion? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Holder?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 9, finance?
Yes, this motion will also be changed, so, I just gotta find my numbers, excuse me one second.
2,640.
2644, right.
Which is good. Give me that number.
I move to authorize the Galesbury Fire Chief to overexpend account 1-425-2-104 overtime by up to $2,644.
$44 due to
Tropical Storm Irene, and to keep the Finance Committee informed of the status of the overexpenditures.
second.
You can see we took out the training career firefighters line because when we reviewed this in finance, we said, why would training career firefighters have to do something for Irene? But it turns out they transferred money from that line to cover overtime. But we wanted to be transparent. They had overtime requirements due to Hurricane Irene for that amount of money, so we want to authorize the overexpended by up to that amount.
And at the next council meeting, we will be dealing with one for Ledyard Fire as well. So they will bridge that.
And as you may recall, we dealt with one with Public Works in the
already.
last meeting.
Where's the other shoe?
There isn't another.
Police?
No, not that we're aware of, but we're allowing this because we've applied for FEMA money, and the belief is we're going to receive the FEMA money in this fiscal year.
Right.
To cover it. So we're allowing them to overexpend instead of moving money because it should be reimbursed.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Please call the roll, Roxanne.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Mulder? 8 in favor, 0 opposed.
The motion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Is there a second? No, without objection, we're adjourned at 9:27.
Yeah.